The village had always been a place where whispers carried faster than the wind. Everyone knew everyone's secrets, yet no one spoke them aloud. In the heart of this forgotten land lived Amina, a young woman with a quiet strength in her eyes. She had dreamed of freedom, of making choices for herself, but her brothers believed a woman's voice held no weight. To them, she was nothing more than a bargaining chip. And so, when they spoke of her marriage, she knew her fate would not be of her choosing. Her brothers gathered late into the night, their voices low but heated. They spoke of debts, of alliances, and of honor. The name that returned again and again was that of a man feared by all, Murad, known in the region as Wild Horse. His temper was untamed, his fists like hammers, and his appetite for drink and violence unmatched. No woman had dared stay by his side for long, but none had ever lived to tell their full story. Still, her brothers decided, Amina would be his bride. Amina protested, her trembling hands clutched at her brother's sleeves. Please, she begged, I cannot marry him. You know what they say about him. But their eyes were hard as stone. To them, her fear was weakness, and weakness was shame. One brother struck her across the face to silence her cries, reminding her that their decision was final. That night, Amina lay awake, staring at the ceiling beams, tears soaking her pillow, knowing the dawn would steal her freedom forever. The wedding was rushed, as if her brothers feared she might run. Amina was dressed in red silk, her face painted with trembling strokes. The villagers gathered, their eyes avoiding hers, for they knew too well what kind of man Murad was. He arrived on horseback, his presence like a storm. His laugh was coarse, his beard wild, his eyes bloodshot with arrogance. He called her, his prize, as if she were livestock. And though her lips whispered vows, her soul screamed in silence. That night, the celebration was loud with drums and clinking cups. Murad drank until his words slurred, boasting of how no woman had ever tamed him and how none ever would. Amina sat in the shadows, her heart pounding, every sound making her flinch. She watched the men cheer, her brothers proud of the deal they had struck. To them, she was not their sister anymore, only a seal on their honor. The laughter stung more than the bruises she already carried. As the night grew darker, the torches burned low. Murad pulled Amina into the house that was now hers only in name. The door slammed shut behind them. His grip was rough, his voice thundered with drunken rage. You are mine now, he spat, shoving her into the room. She tried to speak, tried to plead for kindness, but he drowned her words with cruelty. Every scream was swallowed by the walls, every tear unseen by the world outside. By morning, the village awoke to silence. Murad's house stood still, the door ajar. When her brothers entered, their pride turned to horror. Amina lay lifeless on the floor, her body bruised, her face pale. Murad was nowhere to be found. The villagers gathered, but none spoke. The brothers' decision had cost them their sister, and the man they had trusted with her life vanished into the wind, leaving behind only whispers of her tragedy. The brothers stood frozen, their pride crumbling into dust. The weight of their choice pressed on their chests like an iron chain. They had handed their sister to a monster, ignoring her pleas, and now her silence condemned them. One brother fell to his knees beside her body, shaking her lifeless hand as though begging her forgiveness. But Amina's eyes, once filled with hope, now stared empty into the void, reflecting the cruelty of those she had trusted most. Word spread quickly through the village, traveling faster than fire on dry grass. Mothers clutched their daughters closer, fathers muttered curses, and neighbors shook their heads in shame. Everyone had known Murad was dangerous, yet no one dared speak against the brothers' decision. Now the cost was laid bare. Amina's death was not just the work of Wild Horse, it was the work of silence, fear, and tradition that placed honor above a woman's life. Murad's absence became a shadow haunting every corner of the village. Some claimed he had fled to the mountains, others whispered he had bribed the guards. A few swore they saw him riding at dawn, vanishing like a ghost on his black horse. The brothers demanded justice, but no man dared pursue Murad. He was wild, untouchable, and protected by his own legend. Even in absence, his name carried fear. The villagers could only look down at Amina's grave, powerless. The burial was a quiet affair. Amina's body, wrapped in white cloth, was lowered into the earth beneath an old olive tree. No songs were sung, no eulogies spoken. Her brothers stood with bowed heads, but their eyes betrayed not grief alone, there was shame too. They had silenced her voice in life, and now she would remain silent forever. The villagers turned their backs as they left, for in their hearts they knew justice would never come. At night, the brothers could not sleep. Each dream was filled with Amina's face, her eyes filled with terror, her lips whispering the word they had ignored, please. Guilt clawed at them like an animal. Some tried to drink away the memories, others tried to justify their actions. But deep down, they knew they had betrayed their sister. She had been more than a pawn in their game of honor, she had been a life, and they had thrown it away. Weeks turned into months, but the whispers never faded. Whenever the brothers walked through the village, people lowered their voices, but their eyes spoke louder than words. The brothers carried not just grief, but a stain on their names that no wealth or pride could wash away. Murad had vanished, but the shadow of Wild Horse lingered, a reminder that violence does not disappear simply because the man is gone. Amina's story became a warning passed quietly between women. Some said her spirit lingered near the olive tree, watching in silence. They spoke of strange winds at night, of whispers in the branches, of shadows where none should be. The brothers, unable to bear the guilt, avoided the place altogether. But the women of the village sometimes left flowers at her grave, not out of tradition, but out of sorrow for a life stolen. In those small offerings lay the only justice Amina would ever receive. Time is said to heal all wounds, but for the brothers, time only deepened them. Every season reminded them of Amina. When spring flowers bloomed, they remembered how she once wove crowns of daisies. When winter winds howled, they recalled her small hands tending the fire. She had been the heart of their home, and in their greed for pride, they had torn that heart out. Now, the house felt empty, haunted by an absence louder than any sound. Murad's legend only grew in his disappearance. Travelers carried tales of a man with wild eyes who stormed through villages, leaving broken bodies and broken hearts in his wake. Some said he lived among thieves, others claimed he had taken another bride by force. Each rumor was another knife to the brothers' hearts. If only they had listened, if only they had cared, their sister might still be alive. But, if, was a word too late for them. The villagers, too, bore the scar. They began to question the traditions they once clung to, traditions that chained women to decisions made by men. Mothers whispered to daughters, do not let them silence you. Fathers, once rigid in their beliefs, began to soften, haunted by the thought that one day, their own daughters could share Amina's fate. Amina had not lived to see it, but her death began to change the very fabric of the community. Among the younger women, Amina's story became both a warning and a source of courage. They spoke of her in hushed voices, not just as a victim, but as someone who had tried to resist. She said no, they reminded each other. Her refusal, though ignored, planted seeds of defiance in hearts that once only knew obedience. The story of her last night became a kind of quiet rebellion, teaching them that silence was not safety, and obedience was not love. One night, years after Amina's death, one of her brothers returned drunk from the tavern and wandered past the olive tree. He swore he heard her voice in the wind, calling his name. Panic gripped him, and he ran until his legs gave out. That night, he confessed to the others what he had heard, his face pale as ash. The brothers never spoke of it again, but from that day forward, none of them dared pass that tree alone. As the years stretched into decades, the brothers aged, their hair graying, their bodies weakening. Yet the memory of that night never left them. Each brother carried it like a curse, a shadow that followed them into every corner of their lives. Some tried to seek forgiveness in prayer, others in charity, but no amount of good deeds could erase the blood on their hands. The villagers never forgot, and neither did their own hearts. Amina's grave became a silent testament. The flowers never stopped coming, placed by women who never knew her but who understood her pain. Some said the earth around her grave was richer, the grass greener, as though the land itself wept for her. And though her brothers tried to live as though life continued, they knew it never truly did. For every smile they forced, every word they spoke, the truth whispered louder, they had killed their sister as surely as Murad had. The tale of Amina outlived those who caused it. Long after her brothers were gone, children still asked about the woman who married Wild Horse, and died before the sun could rise. Elders lowered their voices when telling the story, for it carried both warning and shame. Yet, they never stopped telling it, for forgetting would mean repeating it. And so, Amina's name endured, not as a sister, not as a bride, but as a symbol of a life stolen too soon. Murad, the man they called Wild Horse, was never captured. His name became more legend than flesh, a curse whispered around fires. Some said he was killed in a brawl, others believed he still roamed the mountains, untamed and unpunished. His absence was its own punishment to the village, the knowledge that monsters sometimes escape justice while the innocent lie beneath the earth. Yet Amina's death ensured he was never remembered with glory, only with fear. For the women of the village, Amina's grave became sacred ground. They visited in secret, leaving petals, prayers, and tears. They whispered their own struggles to her spirit, as though she were a guardian who understood. In her silence, they found strength. And though she had died voiceless in that final night, her memory spoke louder than her brothers, louder than her husband, louder than the traditions that had betrayed her. The men of the village, too, could not escape her ghost. When arranging marriages, fathers hesitated, remembering Amina's fate. Brothers thought twice before striking a sister's pleas from the air. Change came slowly, as change always does, but it came. Amina's death was the wound that forced them to see what pride and control had cost. In the end, she became a martyr to a cause she never chose, but one that reshaped the path of those who followed. Decades later, under the same olive tree, a girl sat with her grandmother listening to the story. Why didn't anyone save her? She asked, her voice trembling. The grandmother sighed, tears shining in her eyes. Because fear made cowards of us all, she answered. But you must be braver than we were. You must speak, even when your voice shakes. Silence is what killed Amina. And in that moment, the story became more than tragedy, it became a lesson. The wind rustled through the branches, carrying with it a whisper that only the girl seemed to hear. She looked toward the grave, her small hand clutching the flowers she had brought. She placed them gently on the earth and whispered, "I won't forget you." Her grandmother smiled faintly, knowing that Amina's spirit lived on in the hearts of those willing to remember and resist. In this way, the dead continued to shape the living. Amina's story was one of sorrow, but also of awakening. Though her brothers had silenced her voice, and Murad had stolen her life, her memory endured like roots beneath the olive tree, unbreakable, unseen, but always there. The village would never forget the night a woman was forced to marry a man called Wild Horse, only to be dead by morning. And in every telling, her spirit rose again, warning, guiding, and reminding them of the price of silence.